Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, there you are. All
I
right.
didn't know you wanted to respond.
I need audience response now.
Yeah, okay.
Excuse me.
I'm here.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
There you go. Well, welcome to our annual town budget meeting. Hopefully you all know by now that one of the responsibilities of the city staff is to prepare a 5-year capital improvements plan, which is a plan that outlines major projects, infrastructure projects for the city of Ames over the next 5 years, like your streets, your water and sewer utilities, your electric improvements, your improvements at the Parks and Recreation, and also the library. In addition, we're also authorized to prepare an operating budget for all the services we provide to the citizens of Ames. Those two documents are very important. And actually, the town budget meeting then kicks off the staff's preparation of those two important documents. And before we actually start that work, we like to get input from the citizens. We want to hear what you want, see if we can incorporate that into our budget recommendations. Those will ultimately go to the city council, and we're going to staff will lay out to you today the whole schedule from the beginning to the end of this process. Final decisions will not be made, you'll hear, until February, so there's plenty of time to offer input, not only to the city staff as we prepare our preparation of the documents, but also to the city council before they make their final decisions. Now, tonight we're going to predominantly try to get input from all of you who are here today. We got a big crowd here. Wave, if you're on television, everybody wave. But for those of you who are out in the audience, you can call in your comments and your suggestions on area code 515-239-5214. And if you're watching and following us on Facebook or YouTube, you could type in your comments there. But it's only for tonight. The good part is if you can't make it, you weren't able to make it tonight, you watch this replay later on, you can always email me your comments. And we'll be looking for suggestions tonight on what you like to see us spend money on in terms of capital improvements or the operating budget, right? Those are our services, the programs we provide to the citizens of Ames. Equally important, if you follow the federal government and state government, we always like ideas on what you want to spend more on, but the city council is cognizant of the impact it will have on all of us as citizens, either in property taxes or utility fees. So we always look for suggestions maybe that you're willing to do less of. Maybe we can do less of a certain program, a program you don't believe we should continue spending money on, kind of as an offset if possible, okay? So that's always welcome too. Before we open it up to the mic to get your ideas though, I'd like to have city staff give a little background for people in the audience, people watching in on our budget, a very broad overview of the city budget if we could. We'll take a few minutes. So we have with us today the staff. We have Corey Goodenow, who is our finance director, Nancy Masteller, who's our budget manager, Brian Phillips, who's our assistant city manager, and Susan Guiazza, who's our public information officer. So we're here to answer any questions you might have too, but I can assure you we will take all your comments, whether you write them in later on, you call them in, or you present them tonight, and I'll make sure that's bundled up and given to the city council too. I can't guarantee you that everything you say tonight will be incorporated in my budget recommendations, because we have to balance a lot of things to come up with an acceptable budget, a service plan for the city of Ames, citizens of Ames, of which we believe is also affordable to all of you. But we will certainly try to take your comments to heart and see if we can incorporate it in. So why don't we start off, you give a few minutes, we'll give an overview of the budget. Corey, and take over, would you please?
Yeah, great. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. Again, it's a small crowd, but it's such an exciting meeting. I'm glad you all made your way down here. So the first thing we have to run through is kind of our schedule, and it's really what we call a budget cycle. So Nancy doesn't get to take the summer off. Once the budget's complete, we just start back up again. So in April, we send out resident satisfaction surveys to just over 1,300 people and 1,000 students. And then this is reviewed with the city council in October as we begin the budget process. In September, we just kind of came out of that. Departments are preparing their capital improvement plans and begin the preparation of the 23-24 CIP and program budgets, which is the year that we're in, and then the upcoming year as well. In November 2nd, today, we're at the town budget meeting, and the emphasis is getting input from residents and citizens. In November, staff drafts our capital improvement plans, and we do what's called a productive review of budget entries, or probe. That's really the line by line item review of each individual department's budget, and it delves in pretty deeply in terms of their operations, especially their challenges and struggles. And then December 12th at the city council meeting, we'll present budget issues. We'll review issues, priorities, preference, and service levels. We'll take a look at the impact of property taxes, impact on residents, and really take a dive into where we think the budget's going to head prior to getting our evaluations. In January, the manager holds budget reviews with the department. So that's kind of the management level review of the budgets. They look at CIPs and program budgets. And then the CIP workshop is held on January 16th. And we also take public input on January 23rd. In January and February, we hold the program budget meetings with departments. That will occur on February 2nd, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then finally on 13th. A little new wrinkle in the budget cycle this year as a result of some of the legislative changes that occurred last year is each individual resident or property owner will receive an individual property tax statement. And what that will include is largely requested or anticipated maximum levies by the individual levying authorities. So the city, the school district, the county, they'll roll that all up. They'll take the new valuations for the individual property and they'll compare it to the previous year. So it's really an individualized way to say, these are the taxing entities' proposed budgets on property taxes, and this is how it impacts your individual property. So a little bit different than it has been in the past. Nobody's received that. They've always received their assessment, and then we've provided the taxing entities provided individual levies, and you'd had to consolidate that to come together to get your own. So this will bring it all to you. It'll tell you when we're having our hearings on those items. So for each individual taxing, so a little bit different, a little bit more detailed information. Then finally, additional change, the budget will be adopted in April of this year or next year. So a little bit later than anticipated or has been in previous years because of the requirement to send out those property tax statements. This is a little bit of information over the last several years of valuation increases. So each individual property's taxes are dependent on basically three different things. It's your valuation of your property, the property tax rates from the individual levying authorities, and then additional rollbacks or reductions as required by the state government. So you can see the current budget year when we had a 0.2% increase. The previous year we were at 4.4, but you can see it varies depending on the individual year. Much of the variance is largely dependent on when properties are assessed, and that's done in odd years. So it's a little bit of a confusing calculation, but generally you see kind of an up, down trend when you're doing valuation analysis. This slide shows the city's tax rates for the last 4 years. So an interesting thing about the city of Ames is they use the local option sales tax to reduce the property tax rate. So 60% of the city's sales tax goes to reduce the property tax rate. So you can see the top on the 23-24 budget would have been $12.02, but $1.82 lower that to $10.20. So the city's levy rate per thousand is $10.20, but without that local option sales tax, it would have been $12.02. This is just kind of a visual representation of the allocations of individual property taxes. So I think there's sometimes some confusion about where property tax goes. As you can see, the school district makes up just over 45% of the total levy rate or total aggregate tax rate. The county makes up 19%. The local community college makes up 2%, and then the city makes up 33%. So you can see there's always some confusion that the city is the only taxing entity, and that's simply not the case. In fact, we're not even the largest taxing entity. So there's a lot of confusing things that I mentioned that go into preparing and analyzing your individual tax bills. And what this slide attempts to do is show the last 4 years of a home valued at $100,000. So each year across the top here is a home valued at $100,000. And each year, in fact, just this week, usually in November, the state releases what they call a residential rollback, and that's a reduction in the valuation of the individual properties. So what home that would have been valued at $100,000 is 100% assessment is now has a taxable value of $54,650. So that's really how we come up with the valuation that is then applied. The tax rate's applied to the $10.20, and it comes out to $557 per year in taxes that the city collects off a $100,000 property. And you can see the city's been fairly stable. Even I guess our tax rate in the current year is $557, and 2 years ago was the same. The previous year it was reduced. So I think the city's done a pretty good job of maintaining some of those levy rates and tax rates and total tax collection, even with changes in the levying or in the residential rollback.
So I want to interrupt here. This is an important point that we're pointing out here. Many of us had our assessments redone this year, and they were very large, significant, right? The city assessor is charged with coming up with the true market value. And like it or not, for a lot of economic forces, nationally and through the state, our values have increased substantially. But if you get an increase in your assessed value, I don't want you to think from the city standpoint that your taxes are going to go up by that same large assessment. Each year we put our budget together and we have to decide how much more we need in dollars, in general property tax dollars, which basically primarily go to finance the library, parks and recreation, police and fire. Now there's some other smaller ones, but those are the four large departments. Once we determine that number, we then have to come up with a tax rate. That's the decision made by the city council. So as your assessed value goes up and we need a certain amount of money, we're able to reduce the tax rate. You see what I mean? And you'll notice in a couple of those years, we reduced the tax rate because we had higher assessed value. Remember that? Last year was only 0.2%, not very large. So we had to have an increase in the tax rate. But we, through the city council, will make that decision. And we have proven it the last 10 years. I could show you as the assessed values went up, we decreased the tax rate to collect that amount of money incremental we need. That's what we shoot for. So just because it goes up 20%, your assessed valuation, we're not going to keep, if we kept the rate the same, we would collect a lot more money than we need. We only collect the amount we need to provide that incremental amount for the police, for those individual departments I discussed. So I can assure you, we're cognizant of the impact this has, and we could soften the blow. The council could control it by the tax rate and lowering it to offset it. And it's also helped through the rollback, which is increased. The rollback means the percentage that your house, the assessed value is subject to taxes. The taxable value is less than your assessed value. Okay? Excuse me.
Thanks, Steve. Nope, thank you. So you can see these total calculated tax across the bottom. Those actually roll into the next slide. So the question typically is, how are my property taxes spent, or what do we spend our property taxes on? You can see the largest portion goes to streets and traffic at $161, and then public safety follows that with police protection about $126. As you can see, the library, park and recreation, they all have individual amounts assigned to them. And the one thing I think it's interesting to point out is when I do at least my home budgeting, I don't budget things annually. I do it on a monthly basis. So for a $100,000 house, they're really supplying $13.42 for streets and traffic and $10.50. And that's applicable to any property. So if your property is $100,000 or $300,000, you would just multiply it by 3. So it's easy enough to calculate those when you take into account your own individual property. This is what this slide attempts to show is how we got to the $10.20 and where that valuation comes from. So on the top line, the city works through our budgeting process to identify our needs, and the council confirms those needs. And that is reduced by state replacement tax. The state's been modifying what the city can and collect taxes on, including certain percentages related to commercial and industrial properties. There was a pretty significant impact on cities in doing that. And so they elected to replace some of that funding. And then the city also reduces, as I mentioned, property tax rates by returning some of those local sales tax to reduce the property tax. So you can see without the state replacement tax and the local property tax, the rate would have been $8.33. But with those two items, the net general levy is $6.34. We had 60 cents for the transit levy. And before debt service, that puts us at $6.95 roughly. The debt service levy, which is utilized to finance significant capital projects, is $3.25. And that gets us to our $10.20. And the total collection is $34,809,152. So that's what the city suggests that it needs to fund and continue our operations.
Let me just remind you again, if I could, local option sales tax. Remember the local option sales tax, the 1%? 60% of it, 60% of the proceeds, that's the amount there, the 6.1 million, that 60% goes to property tax reduction. The other 40% can be spent on community betterment projects. That is a broadly worded, intentionally broadly worded phrase that allows city councils, not only in the city of Ames, but other places to use those funds that fits under that umbrella, that rubric, okay? For us, we use that predominantly to fund public art, the arts, and also human service agencies. That's where we have the operations of human service agencies and the arts. And then we also make some other small capital improvements in the library and some of the parks. We use local options sometimes for that, okay?
Thanks, Steve. This is a summary of the total revenues for our current adopted budget. As you can see, the property tax is at $35 million, or just over $35 million at the top. Other taxes, which would be local option sales tax primarily, make up just roughly $13.5 million. Licenses and permits is just over, I guess that's $1.6 million. And then we also get intergovernmental revenues, which is road use tax, federal grants, things like that. The largest portion of the city's revenues are charges for service, which is predominantly utilities. So the city operates several different utilities, primarily electric, water, and sewer. We also have stormwater utilities and some other enterprise funds that make up that number. So that's a significant portion of the city's overall budget. It is not related to property tax, but really related to utilities. We have fine, forfeits, and penalties of $730,000. Use of money in property, so that's just interest and rent that we receive or lease revenue from our current assets. We have miscellaneous revenue, which is primarily made up of bond proceeds, whether it be bond proceeds to support capital projects related to general governmental funds, or also that includes projects for our utilities. So that could be sewer revenue bonds or electric revenue bonds, not typically electric, but generally those utilities. And then, of course, we have internal service revenue that are used to support just our continuing operations.
Yes, I'm sorry. Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We got to get a microphone.
Sure.
Wait, 1 second.
The charges for services are primarily composed of the utilities. So it would be the electric utility, the water utility, and the sewer utility. So those are considered charges for service.
We do have a small amount if you pay recreation fees,
Sure.
but those are not a substantial amount. The major portion of that are utility fees.
Yeah, about the electric utility is about $60 million, and each of the water and sewer are between $10 and $12 million. So a significant portion of the city's overall budget.
Good question.
Yep. Any question? All right. This is just kind of a visual representation of the previous slide. As you can see, a good question. The charges for service makes up about 42%. As I mentioned, the intergovernmental revenue, makes up about 17.5%. And I think the most interesting thing is property taxes is about the third largest revenue source, at just over 14% of total revenues.
Don't you love those graphs? I just love those graphs.
I think we spent extra time on the graph for this presentation, for the record. So the next slide is just a summary of our total expenses. The charges for service was mentioned. This $80 million is primarily directed for charges for service. So this would be the cost, this $80 million of our utilities, so the electric, sewer, and water utilities. So that's why that's such a significant portion of our revenues. Public safety is, of course, fire and police primarily. Transportation, the next line down of $24.5 million, consists of our street network and Cyride as well. Community and recreation is largely the library and our park and rec departments at 11.3 million. And then we have some of the smaller community development, governmental, debt service at 18 million. The previous slide mentioned revenue to service debt and debt issuances. We have about $18.2 million that we'll be servicing in the current year. We have about $67 million for capital improvement projects. So that would be across all of the city's projects. So big street projects, material improvements to the water and sewer services. And then we have internal services, which matches the expenses at just under $22 million.
You have a typo there, right?
Where do I have a typo?
Grand total expenditures. Are those
Oh, yes. Sorry, that should be expenditures. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, now if you're following this, we hope we haven't confused you. You should say, Steve, you're not a very good budgeter because expenditures are $280 million. You remember the number for revenue? It's a quiz. What was it? Who's paying attention? All right, we got to go back. I think it was 270. How could that be? You have more expenditures than revenues. Well, this is a conscious effort we make. Most of this has to do with our utilities. Understand our utilities. We have a 5-year capital improvements plan. We set rates. We plan for rates that will cover not only the projected operating costs for 5 years, but also the capital improvements. So when we raise rates in the first year, we started collecting money. We build up a pot of money. And what we do is then we also pay our capital improvements then by cash. We got this pot of money, so I'm able to draw down the balance. We make a conscious effort to raise the balance to get us through the capital improvement. And rather than going out and borrowing it and now having to pay even higher interest rates, we will have cash on hand to pay it without debt. Understand that? So therefore, in any one year like this year, it looks like for that year, we're not collecting enough to cover our expenditures, but we're not showing you the available balance that we're consciously drawing down to do that. Everybody understand that? It's very important you understand it, or it'll look like, whoa, we're in deficit financing. This is a planned strategy in financing, which saves us money because we don't have to get into paying debts or borrowing money with debt. Most of this is related to our capital improvements for our utilities. So our water, sewer, electric, CIP, capital improvements plan. Okay?
Thanks. Similar to the previous slide, this is just a visual representation of where the money, we're already past that one, where the money goes, we went backwards. The CIP again makes up just under 26%. That's that largest purple color. And then the green color is utilities at 31%. So just a visual representation similar to the previous slide of where the money's coming and going. So I think it's always interesting when we're looking at budgets. It's tough to compare when you don't know what similar communities are doing in terms of taxes and levy rates. I think by giving you information about Ames by itself doesn't really give you a standard. And as you can see, Ames $10.20 per thousand, which is this column here, is very competitive when you look at communities of our size. I think the other interesting thing is it's very difficult to compare communities' tax rates because valuations in each community of their home stock is very different. And so one of the ways to level that out is to do that by capita. So you can see the city of Ames is at $524.02 per capita in terms of total tax collection. And you can see along the left here, there's also a little bit of difference between who collects local option sales tax. Certainly that supplements some budgets. And then there's also some gaming and casino revenue that Dubuque uses. And they use that, they use a significant portion of that gaming revenue to lower their property tax rate. So certainly we don't have a casino here in Story County that contributes to the city. So we're a little bit of disadvantage there, but I do think that I think in general, the city has a very competitive tax rate, particularly when you look at it at a per capita basis.
Everybody on that? Only Dubuque is below us, and they have the gaming with the with local option. We just have the local option.
Yep. All right.
Anybody have any questions on the budget before we open it up for your suggestions for next year? Did it make sense at all to you? Trying to keep it at a high level. Is it too confusing? You got it? All right, no questions? All right, mayor just walked in. The mayor, always in charge of the golden microphone. So you're all here. You need to talk. Let's let everybody talk first before we go a second round if you need it. And remember, you could call in. Brian will write down all the suggestions. You could call in tonight and only tonight, or your comments on Facebook or YouTube. But after that, go ahead and write me, and I'll make sure it all goes to the city council. Who wants to go first? First up. Pardon me? No, Joel's not. All right, good. More or less.
More or less. That's
More or less.
those are the only options.
Stay the same.
So I have a few things that I'd like to talk about, but I think just right off the bat, I'd like to say that I really do appreciate what the city does with the budget. I think it's really smart financially to never spend what you don't have. I think there is a few things that obviously we could do to help our budget out even more, but overall, I think we're financially pretty stable in that aspect. So one aspect that I wanted to talk about that I was actually brought up earlier by Tim Gardner is the fact that we rely really heavily on something called the Ames Tribune, which is great, but also I think it might be important to maybe put a little bit more money into publicizing what the things we do. I know we do have social media. I know these things do exist, but it might be a good idea to put maybe a little bit more time and money into these things, because getting people aware of these meetings and getting people aware of everything that the city is actually doing may seem pretty straightforward. Let's just make a social media post, but it's not always that straightforward. And I think trying to communicate with our citizens is extremely important, and just relying on something that isn't publicly funded, we are seeing now how it can be very problematic.
Sure.
Another thing I want to talk about, this would be a shocker, but bike infrastructure. I'm pretty pro bike infrastructure. I think specifically in the downtown area, there could be a little bit better infrastructure. We talked a little bit about Main Street. I think it'd be great if we could add bike lanes on Main Street. But not just that, I think there's a lot of areas. Also on biking, we had, what it was now, public input with, you could actually have an interactive map of Ames and talk about infrastructure, mainly bike and pedestrian changes.
Yep.
This is for the bike.
Mike, we're putting it together right now, and I think there'll be a report out
Right.
November 15th. There'll be some public input sessions, right? Yep. Hopefully you participate. Everybody participate in that. Yep. Good.
So I wanted to say that I thought that was, in my opinion, an absolute success. There was actually a ton of interaction with that, and I would say that it would be a pretty good idea to maybe make that an annual process where you could send out this map once a year, say, hey, everybody, by the way, this year, let's see if anybody has any infrastructure changes that they are really passionate about or they see like a problem. I think getting that input is incredibly important.
So you want the technique, we could use it for other than bike paths, all infrastructure, then you're saying, right?
Yes, I thought in general it was a massive success, because I was actually, in the fact that I was even able to go in and read other people's comments was fantastic. A lot of people had some great ideas that I didn't even think about.
Yeah, good.
So I thought that was a really great
Good feedback. Yeah.
aspect. One thing that isn't usually a complaint in Ames is transit. We have pretty amazing transit compared to the vast majority of the United States. But I would say that it's not absolutely perfect, and it never will be, but there are some areas that definitely could get expanded a little bit. Right now, we have multiple routes that I think could definitely use better frequency, potentially just more frequency, maybe even rerouting. The ones that come to mind are the yellow route, the plum route, nights, also on the weekends too.
Yep.
It's pretty sparse. The green route, which is a massive route, comes in once every 40 minutes. This is, obviously it's cost more money, and there's the argument for others. People riding it, it's also because there's not more frequency.
Sure.
But I would also say that I have heard of other cities where they have added surcharges to their water bills, and that actually made the transit fare free in the city by doing that. And I think that's something that we could potentially consider. Obviously, making it fare free would be, another more.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, there is a lot of things that I would absolutely be willing to pay more of my taxes if we were getting more benefits. I should probably add things to the less, since I've almost.
Well, let me just tell you for 1 second, just so
Yes.
we understand, you understand it.
Yes.
Now, SciRide is a whole different operation.
Yes.
It's been created by the city council. There's a separate board that deals with that.
Absolutely.
There are 3 major funders. It's all of us with our property taxes.
Right.
Also, the student fees, if you have anybody who knows a student, they pay for SciRide through their student fees. So when they say they have fare free for students, it's not fare free. They just pay for it, not at the fare box, but through their student fees. And then Iowa State University contributes money to the operations too. And we do get a lot of federal and state money for capital and operating, but those are 3 funders. So they have to make decisions like that. So it's not just the city, when we say we're going to raise the student fees or whatever. But I understand what you're saying, and I'm on the board, so we grapple with that. We want to continue to increase the services. We're talking about that, maybe restoring it on weekends where we had to cut back before, as ridership dropped during the pandemic. But I think the students and the university are getting cut back from the state government. Everybody's concerned about the increased costs. So it's a balance, as all these budgets are. Remember,
Yes.
everybody wants a lot of service, and we do too. But we also know people don't have a great tolerance for raising taxes or utility fees. So it's a balance, but the board is thinking about it. I want you to know that.
For less, I don't have a lot, but one of the things I did see in the last year's CIP was we were planning on expanding some of the parks, which is great, but there were some parking lots that we are expanding to make it larger. I have trouble with that just mainly because there is already existing parking in some of these parks.
Parking lots other than the parks you're talking about?
Yes. I believe it was.
New parking lots. I'm trying to think.
Yeah. Yellow. It's the one on.
I don't recall. Where? I'm sorry. On what street?
Yeah.
North River
Yes.
Valley.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, North River Valley.
Yeah.
That was a gravel area there and I think we're trying to pave that. I don't think we're making any bigger than it was before, but it's right where we're putting the water line in now, right off North River Valley.
Yeah.
But that was just gravel and a mud pit. So I think we're not expanding it, but we're not, I think we're trying to replace it with a little harder surface.
Right. Yeah.
You're right on that sense, but not expanding it though. That's what you meant.
I think there was talks on expansions on the other side of the park as well.
Oh, I think we might be putting some parking in by the canoe, the kayak area. It's a small area. I think it's for drop off. I don't think it's very large, but you're right. That would be a new parking area.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
It's an aspect where I understand from we're updating this park, so we also want to update the parking, but that might be an area where we might want to cut back on to save some money because it's very expensive. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars for a lot of that parking. That if there already is parking available there, I don't see it as maybe a great option.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. You got a lot of good ideas. We'll make sure we take this all into account.
Hi, I'm Stan Raby. I live 219 Wildflower in Ames. I personally cannot say we should spend less on anything because I'm stepping on somebody's toes the minute I do that, okay? And I'm not even going to tell you to spend more on something, but I do want to make you aware of the advantage of the arts in the city of Ames. The Ames Community Arts Council participated in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Survey this year, and one of the things that the survey found is that for every ticket that is sold to a nonprofit arts event, another, and I have to read this number to be correct, another $38.44 is generated in the community by other forms of revenue, either because of paying for parking, going out for dinner, any of those kinds of things, okay? So supporting the arts in this town is a good thing for the city of Ames. The other thing that they found is when people come from outside of town, people don't spend $38.44. The number jumps up to, $60.57. And they found that for arts organizations, on average, 30% of the people attending a nonprofit arts event, 30% of the people come from out of town. So we thought we should check to see if that's about the case for us at the Ames Community Theater. Our number is 27% of our population, 27% of our audience comes from outside of the city of Ames. Now, we get some people from Boone. They're probably not going to spend a lot on lodging. We get some people from Story City. And we started looking at this. We get an inordinate number of people from Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Waukee. And not that they're going to stay overnight in Ames, but the arts are pulling people into the city of Ames, and that generates revenue for the city of Ames. So I would just like to make sure that we are sensitive to the fact that when we're supporting the arts, we're not just supporting the arts. We're supporting an economic generator and driver for the city of Ames. And a couple of years ago, actors went through a major building process. We spent we spent over $500,000 on renovating our building. That was over almost $600,000 worth of money generated for Ames contractors. It also then generates money because of all of the follow-on expenses that we have with that addition. So my goal is to just make sure that we all understand that when we give money to the arts, we're doing something for the city of Ames. We're not just giving money to the arts.
I appreciate it. I can tell you, talking to the council, I think they understand that, Stan, and you know what? You don't even have to justify the arts based on a payback. I think the council understands it adds to the quality of life. And that's important. You can't put a dollar amount on it. It doesn't have to pay back through economic development return. I think the council understands that. The challenge of the council, and I'll tell every one of you the same thing. No, you get, council has done a very good job of giving you more. Is it as much more as you want it? No, that's the problem. I've never heard the council say, let's eliminate the arts funding. I've never even say we're going to reduce it. It's just that I'm sure everybody comes to council, we can't give exactly what you want. They're trying to give everybody a little bit more, right? So I can tell you, I know talking to the council, they support it, but really it's also for the quality of life it gives to the citizen of Ames. We have to have those amenities. I can't tell you Parks and Rec pays itself back. Bike paths don't pay yourself back, but it's a quality of life that draws people here. It's what they want in the community. So I appreciate you pointing it out in the economic return, but I don't even think you have to do that to convince the council. Just be patient with them about how much more we can give you each year. That's all I care about. But thank you. You do a great job, by the way. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Andrea Grono at 1411 Ridgewood Avenue, and because Stan talked, I feel like I need to share as well. And it is a delicate balance, and I don't have anything to add on more or less for the board, but I do want to say I appreciate that the city cares for its residents and takes care of the human service agencies as well as the arts. I attend the arts and I work for a local human service agency, and I appreciate that we do care for those folks that need a little hand up and then they're kind of in our fringes. So please continue to care for those. Keep the library up. The library is an important part of that. And thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Neal. Ridgewood Avenue here in town. I have two major areas I want to comment on, two different caps. One of them, I come here a lot about bicycle things. So I have a comment on transit in general. So in the CIP and on our budget, there's just lots and lots of projects that have to do with infrastructure and connectors, intersection treatments, that sort of thing that are related to enabling safe and accessible access for all kinds of non-motorized users, bicycles, yes, but also other users. And I just want to emphasize how it's very important that we keep those pieces in and that we don't subtract from them. They need to be there. It's really important for quality of life, I think, here in the city of Ames. So
Right.
Definitely going for that one. Buses were mentioned earlier, and I've heard so many discussions about the cost of maintaining the bus system here, but I think that's an important amenity for us to have and something that we should keep. It's already budgeted, let's keep it in there. Okay, so second cap I'm going to put on is climate action. You guys have heard from me on this before, but we have in the budget, as far as I know still, a climate action plan coordinator type position. So it's very, very important that we keep that position in, that we don't take away the funding and kind of diminish that or push it back just because it's easier, we need to rob from it. I feel like we're missing a lot of opportunities for the city to go after a lot of different kinds of dollars from different sources because we don't have somebody who can look at across all of our departments who are all working in their own separate ways for climate bits and put those together into a picture that we can sell to bring in more income. I could easily see that becoming something that even ends up funding that position. So I think I want to keep that on top of our list, not subtracted from it. And I had an idea on saving money.
Oh, I like to know.
And this is related to climate action and the conversations that we've been trying to have with, get ready for it, the garbage haulers and the trash haulers in the city. We've seen some of the numbers of the wear and tear that's putting on our streets. We just saw up there a little bit ago what a large part of a cost that is to the city ongoing. Let's keep that process moving and get some changes in place and make some changes there because it would save us hundreds of thousands of dollars and that saves all of us money. So I think that's where I'll stop.
That's good. Let me talk about sustainability because I know everybody's fixated on one position, but I can assure you to be successful in the way we operate in our organization is one person's not going to get the job done. It's a team of all the different parts. Joel's on it. We've got a team now. We're going to move ahead with, and Susan's taking the lead too on some 7, I think, recommendations and moving forward. First steps from the plan. And we're going to move ahead whether we have a body there. We'll get that person hired, but that person can't do it alone anyway. We do everything in teams. And a lot of the work, that person's not going to go out and buy solar or wind power. That's going to come from electric, but we're all working together, as I want to tell you. So I think it's important we have that position, but the success, rise or fall, does not rest solely with that one individual. That will be a good coordinator. And we're already starting to talk to, there's millions of dollars coming down from the federal government. We're always talking, we actually have to do it by region now. And if you follow that, you can't even do it individual by city. We're working together, possibly putting together a regional request for some of our funding requests. Cities are not going to get, if you go alone, you're not going to get as much money as if you bond together. So we've been told that. We're going to get some training. I think, I don't know when is that, Susan, next week, November 6th, week of November 6th, when we're having that training. What is it? Yeah. Oh, you have to be scheduled. Okay. Yeah, we haven't got the invitation yet. We know it's coming. So I agree with you, but understand it's more than one person that's going to have the heavy lift, and we're committed to do that too. It's council's policy and direction, and we're going to try to implement that plan. Good question. Good comments. Anybody else? Joel's.
Evelyn Garrison Robertson, 225 South Kellogg. I know we talked just a little bit Andrea here mentioned about human services. I'm kind of new to understanding the Ames area. I come here from Des Moines. I love working in Ames. That's why I make the daily drive. I will say something I found a little bit interesting is in the human service realm, working with clients, how much toll it has on multiple situations, from your store owners on Main Street to pedestrians crossing the streets, to your average person walking around, as well as your hospitals. I mean, you name it, there's probably some type of effect to it. So it's just kind of interesting. I think it's easier to see in Ames how connected that really is versus Des Moines. You don't always see those components. And so just keeping in mind how much, when you are supporting those service agencies, how much it actually can relieve some of the pressure and the, I'll say, the stress to other avenues, say like your owners of shops or whatever, the neighbors, those types of things that helps prevent further stressors on the city as a whole. So that's all I can say.
Again, I'm pretty proud of the mayor and council because throughout the years, they've supported human service agencies. I think I'd like to see, I should do a study on it, the amount that we give per capita now. I don't know total dollars, but per capita is very significant, probably as good as any other city in the state of Iowa, and maybe the country. Again, the issue is we probably don't give you as much as human services agencies need and deserve, but they're trying to spread money, throughout a lot of agencies. And more and more, unfortunately, it's unfortunate, I believe, more and more agencies are springing up because people need help. So the competition for limited dollars, grows tighter. So we understand that. But the council every year is given more money. And is it enough? Probably not. Everybody we deal with can make that same argument. But I think they understand the importance of providing those services that people really need it. It's a quality of life for them. And we want to make sure we provide quality services for all segments of the population. And they're committed to that. So I appreciate your comments, and we'll try to make sure that keeps happening. Go out and buy things. So we need you to buy things in Ames. That's that local option sales tax. I don't want to see you driving south. I want to see you shopping in Ames. Huh? After work, I want to see you up here shopping now. Okay, good. Anybody else?
Jerry Neal, Redwood Avenue, and this is completely out of my expertise, but I'm going to comment on it anyway.
Okay.
And Joel can maybe correct me. I don't know if this is in the budget, but I've been thinking about making some efficiency changes in my home. For example, my heater, my furnace is 22 years old. So as I looked at that, I was also looking at the city rebates and other rebates and things that I can get as a homeowner, and kind of looking at things. And I sure would like to see more. If there was a way that we could work around the kind of circular budgeting that we have between power and electricity and all of that, I think it would be useful for a lot of the citizens if we could get
Are you asking
more of a rebate for
more or cover more things? More per rebate or cover more things?
Yeah, I would just stick with more. I think we've identified the big winners as far as changes.
Joel,
yeah,
he'd be
so
a
it
good
would
one to
be.
speak to that. You want to speak to that? What's our rebate program and what do we cover now?
Sorry, Joel, but
Can I put you on the spot? You know all those? Why don't you tell you speak it.
We do have rebates, and we'll be looking at how we can increase rebates for heat pumps. We do have rebates for heat pump water heaters as well, and induction stoves and Energy Star appliances, and electric vehicle chargers.
Yeah, that's right. So we're constantly trying to change and upgrade, being on the demand and what's. And Joel will work on that. Joel, we have budgeted the electric utility. It's demand side management. You can look under it, and I forgot. Is it $1 million something a year we put in there?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. So
and really the big work to do with that program, I guess I'm just going to be put on the spot here, is that we have in previous years come close to meeting or exceeding that budget, and we've kept that budget, but it really took a dip in COVID. And we're working our way back up to get those programs out there again. Just
So
better
we
known
agree.
and in people's hands.
Yeah, it's a good investment. We agree it's an investment. Good comments. Anybody else would like to speak? I want to pull up that schedule one more time. Key dates. Key dates for you all. When's the CIP introduction? It's in January 16th is when we will unveil to the public our capital improvement plan, that 5-year plan, all the big projects. So there'll be plenty of time to get input because we're going to show it to the city council on the 16th. The next council meeting after that, the mayor and council ask for public input into it. But here again, they're not going to make a final decision yet. So that's good. There's still plenty of time. Okay, public input will follow that. And then the key ones will be, look at February 2nd, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Those are public hearings we're going to have with the actual departments. Will give their presentations of my recommended budget to the council. People will be able to review that. You'll still have time to give input because it's not really until February 13th where the council will make their final decisions. Final decisions on the budget, which will then they will have to put before the public on our public hearings. There's a public hearing on the budgets that they approve. So really you have until that February 13th to give input to the council, right? To try to see if we've left anything out, see what we're going to charge you for property taxes and utility fees and see if that's okay with you, right? So there's plenty of time for input. So if you weren't here tonight, you want to give some suggestions to the staff. We're trying to put together a budget to take to the council. There's time to get it to me if you want to. You can email me with your comments. Again, I'll pass it on to the city council. Can't guarantee everything's that you send me is going to be incorporated, but we try to do the best we can to provide the services people want, spread those services out to everyone. It's a great challenge before the city council, and they try to balance all those things. But they do a very good job. I think you'll have to agree. Compared to other cities, we have some excellent services. We have great city employees providing it, and we'll keep doing that at the least possible cost to you all. We'll try to keep doing it. All right. Anybody else want to say anything? All right. Well, welcome to. Remember, this is the budget for. I can't believe it. Fiscal year 24-25. Our fiscal year starts in July. Remember, we're on a fiscal year basis. Can you believe we're starting now to put this all together for next July? Trying to guess what's going to happen from July of 24 to June of 25. We have to estimate what we're going to spend. A lot of unknowns out there with the economy, right? But we've got a great staff, financial people putting together in our department heads, and I think we're up for the task. And we'll work very hard with the council support, and you'll be very proud of the city, I hope, again next year. Okay? Thank you for coming. Have a cookie on me. Good night.